When I woke up after heart surgery, the room was too bright and too quiet. Machines beeped softly, like they were trying not to bother me. My chest ached, my throat was dry, but I was alive. The last thing I remembered before the anesthesia was my youngest son's voice telling the doctor, "I'll handle the paperwork. My name is Walter Dean, 62, retired machinist from Wichita, Kansas. I built my small mechanical shop from the ground up. 12-hour days, metal dust in my lungs, and a back that never stopped hurting. That shop put my two sons through college. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. When the nurse brought my wallet and personal items, I noticed something strange. My shop key was missing from the ring. She said, "Your son Caleb said he'd take care of it." Caleb, my youngest. Charming, clever, too smooth for his own good. He'd been handling my finances while I was in the hospital. Said he wanted to make sure the bills didn't pile up. 3 days after I got home, a thick envelope from Dover County Bank was waiting on the kitchen counter. "Property transfer confirmation," it read. I opened it slowly. My shop, the building, the lot, the tools, everything, had been sold. Signed by Walter Dean while I was under anesthesia. The number on the last page hit me like a second heart attack. $480,000 wired to a private investment account in my name. Only the account didn't exist. Someone had used my identity, my signature, my business registration. I called Caleb right away. He sounded calm, rehearsed. "Dad, don't freak out. I just moved the assets to cover your medical costs. It's all temporary." Temporary. The same word he used when he crashed my truck in college. The same word he used when his first business temporarily failed. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked through my empty shop, the air cold, the smell of oil still hanging in the dark. My life's work was gone, traded away while I was sedated. At the bottom of the bank letter was a line that kept replaying in my head. Authorized by power of attorney, signed 11:43 a.m. May 9th. May 9th, same hour I was on the operating table. I stared at that line until dawn, the light bleeding through the blinds. Then I whispered to myself, steady and low, "You took my signature, Caleb. Now I'm taking your future." 2 days later, Caleb pulled up to my driveway in a new black Tesla. Clean, silent, the kind of car you buy to announce that you've made it. He stepped out wearing a navy suit and sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. "Dad," he said cheerfully, "you look great. I told the doctors you'd bounce right back." I didn't answer. I just handed him the bank envelope. He looked at it, then smiled faintly, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "You got the paperwork, huh?" "I did," I said. "The one that says I sold my life for $500,000. You didn't sell anything. I managed it. Big difference." He brushed past me into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and grabbed a beer like he still lived here. "You forged my signature," I said. "Dad, you were out cold. The bills were stacking up. I had to make a move." "A move?" I snapped. "You liquidated my shop, my tools, everything I worked for, and wired the money to some offshore crypto fund." He took a slow sip of beer. "It's not offshore, it's diversified. You wouldn't understand blockchain." That word, blockchain, came out of his mouth like a shield. I leaned against the counter, forcing my hands to stay steady. "Tell me the truth, Caleb. How much of that money is actually left?" He looked down for the briefest second before smirking. "It's all under control. You'll get it back once the market rebounds." The market. I'd heard that tone before, from gamblers explaining why their luck would turn any minute now. "So you used my name, my business, and my reputation as collateral for your get-rich scheme, I said. You didn't just steal from me. You stole from the man who taught you what honesty meant. Caleb's eyes hardened. Honesty doesn't pay bills, Dad. You lived your whole life scraping by in that rust bucket of a workshop. I'm trying to build something bigger. That line landed like a slap. You didn't build anything, I said quietly. You dismantled what was already solid. He grabbed his keys and laughed under his breath. You'll thank me someday. Once the returns come in, you'll see I was right. Then he was gone, the sound of his Tesla fading down the street like an insult that wouldn't stop echoing. I stood alone in my kitchen, the silence thick around me. The refrigerator hummed softly beside the envelope. I looked at it one more time, my own forged signature glaring back at me. That night I opened my laptop and searched how to trace stolen cryptocurrency. The first article said, if you think your money is lost forever, think again. Every digital footprint leaves a trail. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Let's see how smart you really are, son. The next morning, I drove straight to Dover County Bank, still weak from surgery, but fueled by something stronger than painkillers. Rage dressed as purpose. The manager, a woman named Miss Green, greeted me with the brittle politeness reserved for confused old men. Mr. Dean, how are you feeling? We heard about your procedure. Alive enough to ask why my property was sold without my consent. Her smile faltered. She asked me to step into her office. I dropped the envelope on her desk and pointed at the signature line. Does that look like the handwriting of a man sedated under general anesthesia? She adjusted her glasses, scanning the pages. The transaction was authorized under a notarized power of attorney. Everything appeared legitimate. Appeared, I repeated. Then you won't mind showing me the security footage from the day it was signed. That was when her expression changed. Small, almost imperceptible, but I caught it. The kind of look someone gives when they're told to stall. Unfortunately, our system suffered a technical error that week, she said. The footage was lost. A bank lost footage of a $500,000 transaction? Silence. I leaned forward. Here's what I think, Miss Green. My son bribed someone here to validate a forged signature. I'm going to find out who, and when I do, this bank will make the front page. Her composure cracked. She promised to look into it, but I could already see the fear behind her professionalism. On my way out, a hand caught my arm. It was Lena, one of the nurses from the hospital. She'd been in the lobby, still in her scrubs. Mr. Dean, she whispered. I didn't know where else to find you. I saw your son that day, at the hospital. He was in your room right before the surgery, going through your briefcase. Are you sure? I'm sure. I thought he was getting your insurance papers. But when I came back, the folder was missing. She pressed a folded note into my hand. That's the timestamp from our hallway camera. It shows when he entered your room. A timestamp. The first real piece of evidence. When I got home, I watched the second hand on the kitchen clock tick past 11:43 a.m., the exact moment my signature appeared on that forged deed. The next morning, I printed the hospital camera record, stapled it to the fake sale document, and pinned both on my wall. One line connected them, Caleb. My youngest son had turned my life's work into a digital illusion, but he'd left fingerprints, too many to erase. I took a deep breath and said it out loud, like an oath. You made your move, Caleb. Now it's my turn. 3 nights later, I couldn't sleep. The house felt colder, emptier, as if my anger had sucked all the warmth out of it. I sat at my old workshop desk, now just an empty space with oil stains on the floor, and spread out the documents I had gathered. The fake sale contract, the hospital timestamp, and Lena's note. I drew a line between them, like connecting dots in a crime scene. Because that's exactly what this was, a crime scene disguised as family. At sunrise, I drove back to town. My first stop wasn't the bank. It was Ralph's Auto, a small garage run by Ralph Carter, an old friend and my former apprentice. Ralph had grown up under my wing, but unlike my son, he remembered where he came from. "Heard about the shop, Walt," Ralph said, wiping his hands. "People in town are talking. That true?" "Every damn word. Sold out from under me while I was unconscious." He whistled low. "That kid of yours always had champagne taste on a beer budget." I showed him the papers. Ralph leaned over, eyes narrowing. "You know this notarization stamp? It's fake. My sister works at the county office. She'll confirm it." By noon, she did. The notary ID on my power of attorney belonged to a woman who died 2 years ago. That was my second proof. The first was Lena's timestamp. I drove back toward Dover Bank, but before I reached it, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A man's voice said quietly, "Stop looking, Mr. Dean. You're wasting your time." Then the line went dead. It took me a few seconds to recognize the accent. The same man I'd seen once shaking Caleb's hand outside the bank. The so-called consultant who handled crypto accounts. They weren't just covering tracks. They were cleaning house. That night, I pulled Caleb's old laptop from the closet. He'd left it behind last Christmas. The password was the same as always. C@Lebstrong. Some things never changed. Inside his email, I found receipts for transfers, large ones, to a Panamanian exchange. Attached were scanned bank documents, the same ones I'd signed years ago for business insurance. He'd copied my signature file from my old USB drive and used it for verification. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. My youngest son hadn't made a mistake. He'd planned every step. I called Ralph again. "You still know that retired cop you drink with on Fridays?" "You mean Harris? Yeah, why?" "Tell him I've got a case that needs more than a wrench." Ralph laughed darkly. "You're not thinking of going after your own blood, are you?" "I'm going after a criminal," I said. "Blood doesn't wash that title away." When I hung up, the clock read midnight. The evidence wall behind me was filling fast. Dates, copies, receipts, names. Somewhere between those papers, I stopped being a victim and started being a witness. The next morning, a letter arrived from Dover County Legal Services. It wasn't just another bill. It was a cease and desist notice. The bank claimed I was harassing their employees and interfering with legitimate financial activity. Caleb had filed a complaint through their corporate counsel. My own son had turned the law against me. By noon, my phone started ringing. Old friends, business contacts, even the local hardware store where I'd bought supplies for decades. Each call felt the same. Awkward sympathy laced with distance. Word was spreading that I'd lost it after surgery, that I was accusing my son of theft because of confusion or dementia. Caleb's doing. I tried calling him, straight to voicemail. That night, I drove to the old workshop. The new owner, a real estate developer, had already taken over. The lights were on inside, bright and clinical, as men in suits walked through my space with clipboards. My name, painted on the front decades ago, was gone, replaced by a leased banner. I stood in the dark parking lot, rain soaking through my jacket. I could almost hear the echo of the machines, the clang of the press, the hiss of the welder, ghosts of everything I built. When I got home, I found an envelope taped to my door. Inside, a printout of my credit report, showing a new $120,000 personal loan opened under my name. Fake signature, same forged power of attorney. He wasn't done bleeding me. He wanted to bury me. I poured a glass of bourbon and sat at the table until the ice melted. The old clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. I thought about Sharon, my late wife, about how she used to say Caleb had his father's eyes but not his father's spine. I wondered what she'd think of this mess, of how easily I'd been erased. I felt a flash of something close to surrender. 62 years old, heart stitched, reputation shredded. Maybe Caleb was right. Maybe honesty really didn't pay. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "This is Detective Harris. Ralph told me to call. Heard you've got a son problem." I stared at that text for a long time before replying. It's more than that. It's a crime. I turned off the lights and sat in the dark, my hand steady again for the first time in weeks. Harris's text was a reminder that I wasn't finished. Not yet. Detective Harris arrived 2 days later, right as the morning sun hit the frost on my mailbox. 67 years old, retired but sharp as a fresh blade. He wore the same brown leather jacket he'd had since our factory days, when we both fixed steel presses instead of people's messes. He didn't shake my hand right away, just studied my face, the wall of papers behind me, the bourbon glass still half full. "You look like a man who got robbed twice," he said. "How's that?" "First by someone else's greed, second by your own silence." I poured him coffee, black. He refused sugar, old habits. I handed him the documents, bank transfers, the fake notary stamp, Lena's hospital note, and my forged signature. He leafed through them methodically, grunting under his breath. "This isn't sloppy," he muttered. "Your boy planned this like a pro, but he made one mistake." "What's that?" "He underestimated your memory." He pointed to the Panamanian transfer form. "See that routing number? It's linked to a crypto wallet managed through a Kansas City broker. They're supposed to vet clients before onboarding. If your son bypassed that, it's a federal issue." I felt something click in my chest. Not anger this time, but clarity. "So I can prove it." "With the right evidence, yeah. But you'll need to play it smart. He's young, careless. Let him think you're broken. He'll slip." That night, Harris helped me set up a hidden recorder in the kitchen. "When he visits next, keep him talking," he said. "Get him to admit the sale." As he left, he looked back at the evidence wall, the receipts, the handwriting samples, the grainy photo of Caleb at the bank. "Walt," he said quietly, "I've seen drug lords, crooked mayors, con artists, but betrayal that wears your last name, that's the kind that kills slow." After he left, I stood by the window watching the snow drift under the streetlight. Caleb had stolen my business, my name, and now my reputation, but Harris had given me something back: control. I opened a new notebook and wrote across the first page in block letters, "Reclamation Plan." Under it, I listed every step: people to contact, accounts to trace, witnesses to corner. Each line felt like air filling my lungs again. For the first time since the surgery, I felt alive. Not to survive, but to strike back. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and whispered, "You started this, son. I'll finish it. With receipts." For the first time in months, I woke up with a purpose sharper than the pain in my chest. The plan wasn't about revenge anymore. Not exactly. It was about restoration. Harris called it strategic retaliation, but to me it was just accounting. Balancing the moral books. We spent 3 evenings building the framework. My kitchen table became command central. Papers, coffee mugs, and Harris's old police laptop humming like a tired guard dog. "We'll start by tracing where your son moved the sale money," Harris said. "Panama's just a pit stop. The transfers always loop back somewhere legal for cash out." He logged into a private investigation network and began matching the wallet address. After 20 minutes, he smirked. "Bingo. There's a Kansas City exchange clearing the transactions through an intermediary called Blue Crest Holdings. We subpoena them quietly, no warning." I nodded, heart steady. "And while you do that," I said, "I'll handle the human side." I called Ralph, my old apprentice, and asked him to spread a rumor that I was giving up, selling my house, and moving south. Caleb always reacted to weakness. Predictability was his only constant. Sure enough, 2 days later he texted, "Dad, we should talk. Maybe there's a way to fix this." I agreed to meet him the next evening. Harris wired my kitchen with 2 recorders and a small pin camera above the clock. "Don't accuse him this time," Harris warned. "Let him brag. Greed always talks too much." That night, I rehearsed in front of the mirror like I used to before job interviews. Not to look tough, to look tired. Caleb needed to believe he'd won. Before leaving, Harris placed a small envelope on the table. Inside was a printed transaction log. "Physical proof #1, he said. "A paper trail showing $480,000 moving through Blue Crest Holdings to an account ending in 77C9, the one your son registered." I ran my finger across the numbers. They felt like a pulse. Evidence that my legacy wasn't gone, just misplaced. When Caleb knocked the next evening, I let him in with a weak smile. "You were right," I told him. "Maybe I just can't handle money anymore." He grinned, relaxing into his seat, confident. He didn't know that every word he spoke from that moment on would become his confession, wrapped neatly in audio form, ready for the courts. As he started talking, I looked at the clock above him, where the pin camera's red light blinked faintly. "Go on, son," I thought. "Sell me another story. I'm buying this one with interest." Caleb arrived early, nervous but pretending not to be. He smelled of expensive cologne and desperation. I poured him coffee like I used to when he was a kid, back before money rewired his soul. "Dad," he began, "I know things got messy, but I was just trying to help. You were in no condition to manage the business. I made the sale, and now we're sitting on potential." "Potential," I repeated, calm. "Like the 480,000 you turned into air?" He laughed lightly, feigning offense. "It's not gone, it's invested. Diversified portfolios take time to mature." Every word was recording. The small mic in the clock ticked with him. "I didn't mean to upset you," he continued. "You'll get your share once it stabilizes." "My share," I echoed. "So that's how it works? You sign my name, move my money, then decide what I deserve." He bristled, then sighed dramatically. "Dad, come on. You're making this sound criminal. It's not. You gave me power of attorney." I kept my voice low. "No, Caleb. I gave you my trust. You forged the rest." His eyes narrowed, ego flashing through the calm veneer. "You think you can prove that? Everything's digital. People barely remember signatures anymore." I leaned back, let the silence hang just long enough. "That's the thing about digital footprints," I said softly. "They don't fade. They multiply." He frowned, but said nothing. When he left, Harris was already waiting in his car down the block. He slipped inside my kitchen 15 minutes later, pulling the tiny drive from the recorder. "We've got him," he said. "Full confession on tape. He admitted the sale, the transfer, even the fake authority. That's physical proof number one. I didn't feel joy, just clarity. What's next? We build the timeline. Tomorrow I'll submit this to the Financial Crimes Division and push Bluecrest Holdings to freeze the account. Once that money's flagged, it's his neck. That night I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at my desk writing an old-fashioned letter. Ink and paper, no email. It began, "To the Office of Financial Investigations, Kansas City Division. I am reporting a case of identity fraud, forgery, and crypto-based embezzlement by my son, Caleb Dean." When I finished, I folded it neatly and sealed it with trembling hands. Then I took out my old mechanic's ledger, the one I'd used for decades, and wrote across the top, "Debt reversal, starting balance, $480,000. Below it, I added one more line in red ink, "Interest to be paid in shame." The morning after Harris filed the report, everything started to move fast. Bluecrest Holdings froze the crypto account linked to Caleb's name. Within hours, his phone must have lit up like a siren, because by that afternoon, he was pounding on my door. I opened it slow. He barged in before I could say a word. "Dad, what the hell did you do?" "Good morning to you too," I said. He threw a printout of an email onto the table, a notification from Bluecrest. "Your account has been temporarily suspended, pending investigation into fraudulent activity." "They froze everything!" he shouted. "All my funds, my clients, everything I worked for." "You mean everything you stole," I said. "Call it what it is." His face twisted, torn between guilt and fury. "You think this helps you? They're investigating you, old man. Your name's on every transfer." I smiled slightly. "You're right. My name is on it, which makes it my right to report it." For the first time, he looked rattled, like he'd finally realized the walls were closing in. "You can't prove I forged anything," he said, his voice cracking. "That's funny," I said, opening my laptop. "Because you already did." I hit play. His voice filled the room, clear and damning. "I made the sale and now we're sitting on potential. You gave me power of attorney." The color drained from his face. "You recorded me?" "No, son," I said quietly. "You recorded yourself. I just hit on." He sank into the chair, staring at the floor, his jaw tight. "You don't understand," he muttered. "I was trying to build something bigger for both of us." "You built a lie," I said, "and you used my blood as the foundation." When he stood again, his hands were trembling. "You're going to regret this. You've turned family into enemies. You did that the day you traded your conscience for a password." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame shuddered. Minutes later, Harris called. "Bluecrest confirmed the freeze. The feds are interested now. You might get a visit from them soon." "Good," I said. "I'll have coffee ready." That night, I went back to the workshop lot. The leased banner had been taken down. Word had spread that the new buyer's funding came from a flagged account. The property deal was under review. I stood there in the quiet, the streetlight painting long shadows across the concrete where my machines used to stand. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Not because it was over, but because justice had a scent, and I could smell it coming. The next 48 hours were quiet. Too quiet. Harris warned me, that's when people like Caleb get dangerous. He was right. On Thursday morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Emails, texts, voicemails. Caleb had gone nuclear. He'd posted online claiming I was senile, that my memory problems had led me to accuse my own son of theft. He tagged the local newspaper, the city Facebook group, even the Veterans Association where I volunteered. By noon, my inbox was a graveyard of pity. So sorry, Walt. Hope you get the help you need. The kind of sympathy that burns worse than hate. Then came the letter from the hospital's billing department, a new invoice showing charges disputed under family authorization. Caleb had filed to reclaim part of my insurance payout, his name listed as financial guardian. He was trying to make me look incompetent and bankrupt me at once. I stared at the paper until my hand shook. He'd taken my dignity, my shop, and now he wanted the only thing I had left, my credibility. That evening, a car pulled into my driveway. It was Harris, but he wasn't alone. A younger man stepped out, sharp suit, briefcase. "Walter Dean?" he asked. "Special Agent Cole, Financial Crimes Task Force." Inside, they laid out folders, printouts, ledgers, call logs. "We've confirmed the funds were laundered through Panama, then routed back into a shell company registered under your son's name," Cole said. "So he's finished?" I asked. "Almost. We need one more thing, a clean chain of evidence proving he knew the account was illegal. Emails, texts, voice." Harris grinned. "Which means you're about to bait a confession." They showed me how to use a burner phone, how to forward the message trace. That night, I sent Caleb one text. "Son, I'm sorry. Let's meet. Maybe we can fix this before the lawyers ruin you." He replied in seconds. "About time. Where?" I picked the place. The same diner my wife used to love. Neutral ground. Cameras everywhere. When he arrived, he looked exhausted. Eyes sunken, shirt wrinkled. For a moment, I saw the scared kid I used to teach how to hold a wrench. Then he opened his mouth. "If you drop the complaint, I can make you whole. Half the crypto's still hidden. No one has to know." There it was. The greed that never learned shame. I pressed record under the table. He leaned closer. "Dad, we can both walk away rich. All you have to do is stay quiet." I smiled sadly. That's the one thing I'll never do again. The diner's neon lights flickered red and white across Caleb's face, making him look older, almost hollow. His words spilled faster than his conscience could catch up. "I had to move the funds fast," he whispered, leaning closer. "The bank was sniffing around after the sale cleared. Bluecrest wasn't safe, so I routed through a shell. Dad, I swear I was going to make it right." Every syllable recorded. The small device in my jacket pocket blinked once, quietly logging his confession in perfect digital clarity. I kept my tone calm. "So the offshore company, the crypto, all that, it was yours?" "Yes," he said, frustrated. "Mine. But I didn't mean for it to get this far. You have no idea the pressure I was under." That was the moment Harris had told me to wait for. The phrase of ownership. It was mine. When I left the diner, Harris's car was already idling across the street. I slid into the passenger seat and handed him the recorder. "We've got it," I said. "That's physical proof number 2, he replied, grinning. "Chain of custody's clean. Audio, timestamp, location data. It's bulletproof." He forwarded the file straight to Agent Cole. By the next morning, the dominoes began to fall. The Financial Crimes Task Force executed a warrant for Caleb's accounts, seizing not only the $480,000, but also $130,000 in fraudulent loans taken under my name. At 10:42 a.m., Caleb called me from an unknown number. His voice was breaking. "Dad, they froze everything. My cards, my phone. What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," I said quietly. "You did. You think this makes you the hero? You destroyed your own son." "No, Caleb," I said. "You did that the day you used my name as your tool." He hung up, leaving only static in my ear. That afternoon, I received a call from Agent Cole. "Mr. Dean, we've completed the transfer recovery. Your funds are safe, and the Department of Justice has opened a fraud case against your son. You'll be listed as the primary victim." I sat there in silence for a moment, the words heavy. Victim. It felt strange. I wasn't sure I fit the word anymore. When Harris stopped by later, he brought coffee and a grin. "He's in custody, Walt. Confessed to wire fraud, identity theft, forgery. That audio nailed him." "And the shop?" "Deal voided. Sale reversed. You're back on the deed." I didn't smile. I just nodded slowly. Then it settled. Harris studied me for a long moment. "You're not happy." "Happy's not the word," I said. "Balanced, maybe." That night, I pinned the second proof to the wall beside the first. The tape log, the diner receipt, the transfer notice. Underneath, I wrote 3 words. He confessed twice. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, but it held every echo of the past 2 years of my life. Caleb sat at the defense table in a navy suit that didn't fit him as well as his arrogance used to. His hands trembled as the clerk read the charges: wire fraud, forgery, identity theft, and embezzlement. I watched him glance over his shoulder, searching for me in the crowd. When our eyes met, I didn't nod. I just looked. He dropped his gaze first. Agent Cole took the stand and played the recordings. Caleb's voice filled the room. "I made the sale. You gave me power of attorney. It's all mine." Every sentence struck like a hammer. Jurors leaned forward. His lawyer squirmed. Then came my turn. The prosecutor asked if I wanted to testify. I said yes. "My son didn't steal money," I told the jury. "He stole years of sweat, of trust, of every decent thing a father wants to believe he raised." I held up the old mechanic's ledger, the one with debt reversal written across the top. "This isn't revenge, it's accounting. I'm here to balance what he broke." The room was silent except for the sound of the stenographer's keys. When the verdict came, it was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Caleb's jaw locked, his eyes glassy. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in federal prison with restitution of $480,000 plus damages. As marshals led him away, he looked back once more. "Dad, please." "You made your choice," I said softly. "Now live by the contract you signed." Outside, Harris waited on the courthouse steps, hands in his coat pockets, watching snow fall onto the pavement. "It's done," he said. "No," I replied. "It's corrected." We stood there a while, 2 old men in the cold, letting the weight of justice settle into the silence. Later that week, I went back to my reclaimed shop. The smell of oil and metal welcomed me like a familiar hymn. The new sign above the door gleamed under the winter sun. Dean Mechanical, reopened, 2025. I turned the key, stepped inside, and whispered to the ghosts of my past, "Ledger closed." Then, quietly to myself, I added, "And balance restored." 6 months later, the workshop hummed again. I didn't hire many people, just Ryan, my oldest boy, and a couple of apprentices who still believed that hard work meant something. The town that once pitied me now stopped by to shake my hand. One day, I received a letter from Caleb's prison counselor. He wanted to talk. I folded it without reading. Some lessons have to stay unfinished. On the wall above my desk hung the 2 recordings and the forged deed, framed side by side, not as reminders of pain, but of proof. Proof that integrity, even when stolen, can be reclaimed. I locked the shop, turned off the lights, and whispered to the night, "You can lose everything, but not your name. If you've listened this far, thank you. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Stories Men U60 USA, because stories like mine deserve to be heard.